train to Cheyenne rolled in just before sundown, its whistle barely stirring the quiet of the Wyoming plains. The platform was nearly empty, just the conductor, a boy sweeping dust with an old broom, and a woman stepping down from the third carriage with a single bag in hand. Her name was Elsie Parker. At 56, Elsie had known the weight of waiting. The letter in her pocket, creased from weeks of folding and unfolding, had arrived from a rancher named Albert Withers, a widower who had written with the simple hope of finding someone to share the silence. They'd exchanged only 3 letters, no grand declarations, no romantic promises, just 2 lonely souls seeking shelter in one another's company. But there was no man on the platform waiting, no hat lifted in greeting, no carriage to carry her into town. She stood there quietly as the train pulled away, leaving behind only wind and red dust curling around her boots. Elsie didn't panic. She looked up at the horizon, where the plain stretched out like an old quilt, faded, frayed at the edges, but still holding its shape. With a hand to her bonnet, she set off toward town. Cheyenne wasn't much to look at, just a row of buildings, made of rough lumber and years of stories. She passed a general store with a rocking chair that creaked though no one sat in it. A blacksmith's forge still smoldered in the early evening light. Dogs barked faintly in the distance, but no one approached her. At the edge of town, by the fence where the prairie resumed its quiet breath, a tall figure stood watching her. He hadn't moved from that spot since the train arrived. His name was Ezekiel Boone. They called him Big Zeke, not because he was mean or loud, but because he was taller than most, and built like someone who'd hold rail ties with his bare hands. He was known for saying little, and working hard, and for showing up exactly when folks needed help. Zeke had come to the platform that evening out of habit. He often watched the train arrive and leave, never expecting anyone to matter. But when he saw the woman step down with her chin lifted against the wind, he felt something like the echo of a tune he'd once known. They exchanged no words at first. He simply nodded, and she nodded back. That was enough. He offered her a meal and a place to rest, an extra room in his old cabin just outside town. It was clean, quiet, and smelled faintly of cedar wood and tobacco. Elsie accepted without hesitation, trusting the way silence sat between them like something familiar. The days that followed moved slowly. Zeke was up with the sun each morning, tending to the horses and patching fence posts. Elsie stayed indoors at first, getting her bearings. She cleaned windows, beat out old rugs, and boiled beans with just the right amount of salt. The rhythm of ranch life settled around her like an old shawl. They didn't speak much, but the comfort grew. One morning, Elsie found Zeke building shelves in the shed. Without asking, she brought him a cup of chicory and sat on a crate nearby. For the next hour, neither spoke, but when he handed her a finished piece of wood, her fingers brushed his, and it felt like a promise neither had spoken aloud. That evening, as the wind curled through the cottonwoods, Zeke asked gently, "You get stood up?" Elsie looked at him, the firelight reflecting in her eyes. "I suppose so. Or maybe I was meant to take the wrong train, so I'd find the right place." Zeke nodded, staring into the fire. Maybe that's how all the best things start. Time passed without fanfare. The spring rains came and painted the plains green again. Coyotes yelped in the night, and stars filled the sky like lanterns hung from heaven. Zeke started carving again, something he hadn't done in years. Small things at first, a horse, a bird, a tiny sleeping dog, then bigger pieces, rocking chairs, shelves, a small box with delicate edges. One morning, he asked Elsie to come with him past the barn. There, beyond a ridge of yellow wildflowers, lay a flat stretch of land. The prairie bent slightly like a cradle, and in the distance, the hills rolled on forever. "I've been thinking," Zeke said. "This spot catches the morning sun. Thought maybe we could build you a little place here, just yours." Elsie blinked at him. "Why would you do that?" Zeke shrugged. "Because it feels right. Because you remind me what peace sounds like." And so, they began building. The cabin rose slow but steady. Zeke cut the lumber himself. Elsie painted the shutters, a soft faded blue, like a river, long dried, but not forgotten. Neighbors began to notice the change. The old Boone ranch, once quiet as a graveyard, now hummed with gentle life. Smoke curled from the chimney, bread baked in the oven. A worn rocking chair found its place on the porch, creaking softly into the dusk. They never married. They never needed to. What grew between them was older than vows. It was respect, wrapped in kindness, familiarity without force, trust built board by board. Elsie moved into her cabin just before the first snow. That night, they sat on her new porch, with quilts over their knees, sharing slices of pie and watching the stars blink awake. Zeke reached into his coat and handed her a folded letter. The paper was yellowed. The ink faded. "My wife wrote this to me the night before she passed," he said. "I've kept it for years, never read it again, until last week." Elsie opened the letter and read silently. When she looked up, Zeke's eyes were soft. "It says, I shouldn't be alone forever. That one day, someone quiet and kind would come along. And when she does, I should let her stay." Elsie folded the letter carefully and placed it in her lap. "Then I suppose I'll stay," she said. Years drifted by, as gently as the prairie wind. Some mornings, they drank coffee in silence, listening to meadows call across the grass. Other times, they told stories of childhood, of towns no longer on maps, of recipes forgotten, until suddenly remembered, in the middle of kneading dough. Every spring, Zeke carved a new weather vane for her cabin roof, a tradition he invented, claiming it kept the winds lucky. Every winter, Elsie sewed a new quilt, pieced from old shirts, feed sacks, and memories. When Zeke fell ill, one fall, Elsie stayed beside him, reading aloud from the same letters that once comforted her on that long train ride. She never cried. She simply held his hand, as steady as the ground beneath them. He passed with a smile, peacefully, like a man who had said everything he ever needed, without raising his voice. Elsie buried him under the cottonwoods, next to the old fence where they first met. She placed a carved bird atop the headstone, a quiet nod to the man who taught her how to rest. Now, years later, folks still talk about the cabin on the ridge. They say you can sometimes see a light in the window, long after sundown. Some say it's Elsie reading by lantern. Others say it's Zeke checking the wind for good fortune. But most agree on one thing: there's a peace in that place, a stillness that doesn't feel empty, just full of kindness, of patience, of words unspoken but deeply understood. So now, as you lay your head down and let your eyes grow heavy, picture that porch beneath the cottonwoods, the rocking chair swaying, the soft crackle of the fire, and two old hearts finally resting where they were always meant to be. Good night, partner.